Welcome to another episode of Fantasy Reality. In this case, let's talk about skeletons. Common staple in fantasy. Decently common anyways, especially if it's dealing with the undead. I mean, let's face it, let's see here. They've been around. Well, skeleton as a motif has been around for centuries, at very least, because it represents death. Quite literally, I mean, let's face it. When when you die and your flesh decomposes, eventually you're left with nothing but bones. And thus we are understandably afraid of our eventual demise. So, angle of the sun. Well, let's talk about that. Usually there's some sort of magical or supernatural reasoning as to why they are up and walking around. For instance, in the Army of Darkness, one of from Bruce Campbell's I can't remember. Oh, the Evil Dead series. Couldn't remember what it was from for a moment, but Army of Darkness, the Deadites. Those things are quite funny. I mean, you make one small mistake in a spell to try and stop them, and you gotta escape the graveyard, and there's an army of skeletons called the Deadites. This is why you always remember the spell. Klaatu Barada Nahum. And you got to deal with the, split. I mean, it has to deal with the whole Book of the Dead thing. Supernatural magic. There's all that involved. Then another good example would be with the Undead Scourge from the Warcraft series. Specifically, they're basically zombies and everything else. The ghouls, but they can indeed summon skeletons. The necromancers can, at any rate, and they're basically just mindless things that you can just send them after the enemy, and well, you don't need to worry about them too much. You just summon them, send them. They kill your enemies, good. They just enter them to the point that you can send your regular troops after them, good. And if one of your own dies, don't worry, raise up 2 skeletons. Don't ask me how the heck that works. I still don't understand. And then get into the expansion, and you get the skeleton mage too. That's always interesting. Then there's the creeps. Some of them are skeletal creeps, which includes skeletal archers. Well, you get them on your side, they're pretty interesting. The trick is finding permanent ones. Then, let's see here. There's like some evil things going on in that one, the whole demonic legion, so we can at least blame supernatural and magic on that one. Then there's the video game Medieval, where you are a hero in the form of Sir Daniel Fortescue, who was a knight who, well, basically, apparently he was a real good storyteller. King believed he was a hero, believed he was a knight, made him the captain, and when, of course, then the evil sorcerer was causing problems, Sir Daniel led the charge, only to take an arrow to the eye. And was the only casualty besides the necromancer. And of course, that sounds really bad for PR, so you say he was a hero, slew the guy in single combat, died of his wounds. Real tragic. Of course, the real heroes, they don't bully. Find out you're not about that fake, so he doesn't get the good stuff. But, 100 years later, Necromancer shows up, decides to raise the dead, you get Sir Daniel Fortescue. This is a very nice and they use on hockey. He'll show you. Which makes you wonder, how do skeletons talk? You can blame magic for most of the time, but then there's those who don't talk. Then, but, he's got a lot of advantages, hard to, well, let's face it, you can't kill him. Because, well, he's a skeleton. He just comes back together. He can even take his own arm off and use that to fight off his enemy. Be kind of cool. Might stink because you get kicked somewhere and you fall to pieces. Which would be a useful weakness against them. You just kick them right between the legs, they fall to pieces. Make sure you're wearing steel-toed boots. Or Sabatons or whatever. Let's see, another skeleton that well, they can also crop up in the video game known as Gladius. And that is a gladiatorial type game where you are you control a gladiator school, and among the recruits that you can possibly encounter are undead summoners, who are basically skeleton magicians, basically, and who can summon undead legionnaires, who are basically skeletons armed with swords and shields or whatever weapon they're wielding. And then of course you got undead legionnaires. Them you can also recruit. Although in order to recruit the undead summoner, first off you got to deal with is the night after death. You gotta fight against these undead legionnaires and the undead summoners. You go through a series of battles. If you win all three of these battles, you can then recruit the undead summoner, because apparently this guy has a lot of respect for the fact that, hey, he was able to beat the league. Can I join you for free? Which is a great bargain when you think about it. How, because this guy is like the second most powerful magic user, and you're getting him for free? It's a deal! Welcome to the club! And then recruiting the undead legionnaires. Well, you go through the night of that league, and then you talk to the shopkeeper. You have to save his girlfriend, who originally, first off, he'll tell you to go save his one friend who was in a bit of trouble. You save said friend, and it's like, you talk to them a little while later, it's like, we notice this spot that after the sun goes down, skeletons start popping up. Think you can handle it? So you go, take care of the situation there, and you get this nifty little badge. It's like, what's this for? You show it. Well, turns out you walk next to a tombstone at night, and we see you have the talisman of unlife. That means you are worthy of respect. Can we join you? Sure, why not? You're joining for free? Sure. You know, it's pretty cool to have one of those guys. I mean, of course, you got some undead haters who hate people who have undead in their teams, but hey, they're pretty useful. Considering that if you stick them, if you're dealing with a bunch of archers, well, you don't need to worry about an arrow to the knee with them. You just send your legionnaire in. Well, they don't get injured as often, but, well, they will receive damage from an archer or any other ranged fighter, but not as much as a living biological warrior, which is useful in a couple of arenas if you could use them. So, let's see here. Then there's dealing with, let's see here, but how would they function in a reality? I mean, like I said, magic is involved in creating them. I mean, basically, it's like, you know, you got these guys who just summon they basically just raise the dead to attack the enemy, which would be kind of useful, because one, you don't need to worry about caring for their injuries, because they're already dead. You don't need to feed them. Don't need to get provisions for them. You might need to get weapons for them, but usually when you raise them, they tend to have their weapons with them already. Apparently not, they'll just attack. Anyways. You probably don't need to pay them wages. But let's say they weren't mindless. And let's say at the very least they have their own thoughts, that they can think, that they are self-aware, that they have control of themselves, basically. Sort of like Sir Daniel Fortescue from Medieval, as well as the undead legionnaires and summoners from Gladius. Like I said, I mean, because like I said, in Gladius, those two gladiators you can hire them, basically. So, let's assume that they are independent-minded. What sort of things would they do? Well, skeleton, I guess you could use them to do dangerous jobs. In general. Even the mindless ones. I mean, if you have an overseer, necromancer who, it's like, you could have them, do mine work, because especially in areas where the ground is not exactly stable, they could dig down there, and should there be a cave, and it's like, hey, guys, yeah, over here, this section, kind of unstable. By the way, can you help me find my legs? They think they're over there. Yeah, let's see, or you could probably use them as a guard. I mean, that's what I actually have in this one story I'm writing. I have a skeleton as a guard in this city guard, and basically his job is, understandably, arrow fodder. It's not glamorous, but it saves the lives of the guys that have skin and vital organs. And he doesn't mind it. Because the commander of this guard, he's a reasonable-minded sort of person. He's like, okay, and flat out admits it. Listen, the job's not glamorous, and you're probably going to be the guy who gets used to test the waters of a mob, and also to help train the new guards. And it's like, it gives the guy a purpose. He walks into the crowd, and if he comes back in areas will be vital, be like, they're a little hostile at the moment, guys. Let's wait till they cool down a bit. Or, you have a new guard who thinks he's figured out how to handle these straw bales, and next thing you know, a skeleton pops out of there and says, hey, pilot, like, oh, man. You'll learn right away that people fight back in a fight. I haven't exactly written that line yet, but still, it's part of his job description. Wait, let's see here. But would you have to pay those guys wages? That actually, to be honest, that paying monster, whether or not a monster or should be paid a wage for doing their jobs, well, I'll probably discuss that one in another video. But, like I said, skeleton, I can see him working as a guard with little to no problems. You could probably even use him for undercover work, in a manner of speaking. For instance, if there's an area that might have a theft, if there's a shop that tends to experience a lot of theft, what you could do is, and if there's, say, an apothecary nearby, which is known for medicines and whatnot, you could have one of these guards, pose as the shop skeleton. Because, let's face it, apothecaries, they sometimes have a skeleton on display for whatever reason. Or alternatively, if the shop is run by a wizard, a skeleton, that makes sense. Okay, he's a wizard, so there's supposed to be a little woohoo, and a skeleton, not too out of the ordinary for a wizard to have. Considering it's probably the tamest thing that a wizard could have. Let's see here. You got. You could, depending on the area, you could just make them look like a corpse. You know, where they're just laying down, have a shroud over them, maybe a couple of strategic holes for the eyes. However that works. Or just hide them someplace where a skeleton wouldn't go amiss. And they could just, just lay there, watch. They probably wouldn't get bored unless they're independent thinking. Then it's like, you know. But at the very least, they wouldn't need to eat, wouldn't need to drink, wouldn't need to take care of certain other bodily functions. Wouldn't need to worry about that. Or you could just have them stand guard. Again, they wouldn't. I mean, the independent-minded ones, they might get bored, but the important thing is they wouldn't get tired. And they wouldn't, like I said, they wouldn't need to take a lunch break or anything like that, like everybody else. And they could always be ready to fight. I mean, skeleton archers, they could just hold that bow for forever. I mean, they would be the guys that could hold that pose. How long has he been pointing that arrow at us? I don't know, but I'm getting hungry. Like I said, they could just stand guard for a long time. Wouldn't get bored of it. Although if you're dealing with an independent-minded one, you might at least want to let them, be able to take a break every now and then. Because, let's face it, staying in one spot for hours and hours and hours on end, that is going to get boring. Especially if nothing's going on. So, you at least want to, switch them up every now and then. Maybe occasionally move them to a different position to guard that. Be kind of useful. Although, depending on the situation, you could possibly use the whole skeleton thing as a bit of comedy. Like in this one scene I have with my skeleton guy, Skelly, that's what I named him, because he forgot his real name, because it's been so long since he talked to anybody, that he forgot his own name. until he met up with the commander of the guard, who gave him the nickname of Skelly, which Skelly was quite happy with because it's a name, and basically it's like part of this guy's deal is you can't enjoy the smell of roses, you can't feel the weather, you can't feel the heat or the cold. And basically, in this one scene, I have him walking, and I mention at some point, Arthur is going to mention that a skeleton walks noisily. However, Skelly walked much more quietly than the man next to him. Sadly, the man next to him was already was having a coughing fit. And then the guy with the coughing fit turns to looks at Skelly, trying to, to get money, and then takes a real good look. Walks this way. Cough gone. Mainly because this guy was just trying to get money from Skelly in order to, as a go-away bribe. Doesn't work too good on a skeleton. And it's, and of course he runs into another animated skeleton. A female. You can tell by the pelvis. And it's like, I'm sure if you've ever written those moments or the whole love at first sight, I basically poked fun of that. Like, looks at her, head spinning around, doing a 180. That right the neck. Literally. And mentioning if he had one of Adam's apples, he would have taken a bite out of it. But instead, he just stared. And, the whole response sort of thing is like, it's quite funny. And then he goes into this apothecary shop, which the other skeleton is in, and it's like, and he's trying to figure out, should I take my helmet off or not? Because he's trying to debate, how polite should I be? Should I take my helmet off, hold it under my arm, or should I just leave it on? He's trying to figure that little debate. And it's like, hello? And she responds, hello. And the Skelly's like, oh, that's a relief. What, that I'm a female? Yeah. I was kind of worried. I was kind of hoping that at the very least you weren't a skeleton head on a male skeleton head on a female skeleton body. I know what you mean. You get into a jumble. So what do you do here? That whole conversation. And it's quite funny. A little bit humorous. And they decide to go out for supper, which is kind of interesting because it's like, how do skeletons eat? And basically what it involves is Skelly, he gets a rookie guard. It's like, buddy, you're standing in for my stomach. And as for our female skeleton, Sally, At least I think that's her name. Which I guess you could call her another joke, because I haven't figured out her last name yet, but Sally Forth? You know, well, she works at the apothecary, and this woman tried to rob it. It's like, hello, hello. Do you want to say hello to the Thieves Guild for your illegal theft? Or do you want to help out me and this lady? I think I maybe help you out on your date. Just go mention it to the Thieves Guild. I don't need to see them. You know? You know, the whole setting up the date, that sort of thing. Oh, that's kind of funny. I mean, I more or less kind of skipped to the afterwards of said date, but apparently it was quite funny. You know, and it's like, you know, basically sort of like a typical date sort of thing, only it's like with some minor awkwardness because they're skeletons, and it's like, so how do we do this part? Well, I don't know. We could run the motions, or we could hire somebody, you know, a couple of bodies to stand in for us, you know. Which would make you wonder, what would a skeleton do with a paycheck? I mean, where would they live? I mean, they wouldn't necessarily need all that much. So basically, they'd end up having a lot of money. I mean, they wouldn't need food, wouldn't need to drink, clothing. Well, if they want to be modest, yes, they probably wear something. I don't see them paying for heat during the winter because cold doesn't bother them that much. It might affect, I mean, snow might affect their mobility, along with mud and other such things, but the cold wouldn't. On the other hand, if they had, quote, living family, well, maybe they'd have to deal with that sort of stuff, but at least they wouldn't need to worry about paying for themselves. Would they pay taxes? That's a good question. You know, you gotta. Those things are worth thinking about. Would they? You know, but then there's other things you gotta know about them. I mean, for one thing, they'd be relatively light. The human skeleton is about 1/10 the weight of a their flesh and blood counterparts on average. So, in my case, I'm about let's call it 280 to be safe. So, my skeleton would weigh around 25 pounds or so. That's fairly light right there, so relatively easy to break apart, you know. damage, with a good strong blow. I mean, so, typically they're considered fragile to a certain extent because you just smash them and but most of the time they can just reassemble themselves depending on the nature of their universe. Like I said, and let's see here, I mean, they'd be tireless. You could tell them to follow somebody, they wouldn't get tired. They just keep following, no matter what. I mean, you hop on a boat, they'll just walk under the water. You get in a carriage, they'll just keep walking. Yeah, they say to work with a dragon and fly, they'll just keep walking. Let's see here. You wouldn't need to worry about poison. You wouldn't need to worry too much about traps. You just, these guys, they go in, they end up on the wrong end of a trap, they go, yep, we got a trap over here. By the way, could someone find my leg? Or alternatively, could someone reattach my head to the rest of my body? That'd be kind of funny. A lot of funny scenes. And in general, they'd be next to perfect because you could just keep on summoning them. Problem would be if you dealt with an independent-minded guy who doesn't like you. So, in that case, you might earn their respect. Well, it's getting a little late. I guess I might want to wrap this up. So, thank you for watching this episode of Fantasy Reality. I hope you do some thinking.